I buy the guitar and I'm driving home, with the 57 Esquire that's got a lot of problems and it needs a lot of help. So Sunday morning, I pull it out and start messing with it. And it's just like, again, now I'm playing it through my amp and everything. And it's like, it sounds terrible.
I'm so envious. So you got a 57 Esquire, but or a couple years ago during the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you convince your wife that this was a worthy investment? And also, to me, the Tele, if I understand, it's like it's not the original finish. I think you had it refinished, and you've had some other things done to it.
Yeah.
So did those things bother you, or was it such a great guitar that those things aren't as important?
Yeah, this is all going to make sense and add up.
Yeah.
So I, always wanted, everyone wants, it'd be cool to have a 50s Telecaster or Esquire, and it's just they've always.
I want to know how to get one. Secretly, I just want to know how I can get my hands on one.
So there's a semi-famous collector down in the Houston area named Charlie Daughtry, and he had let my friend J.D. Simo borrow this, I think it was a 55 or 56 Tele, and J.D. let me borrow it, and I took it to rehearsal. I wasn't going to take this, because even then it was probably a $10,000 to $15,000 guitar back then. And it was just, I loved the shape of the neck. I loved the soft V thing going on with it. And I really fell in love with the guitar. And I told JD, I said, there's no way in hell I could ever afford a guitar like this. And he said, actually, if you found one that was a body refin and one that's an Esquire, that would be, you could probably find one of those. So I started looking like crazy for one of those. And the other thing that you have to know is that you are not going to find a good guitar here in Nashville.
Because they get picked too quickly?
They get picked too quickly. So it's like...
And there's a premium when they sell them at Carter and Gruen and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you have a good Tele, then you already have, 5 of your friends have already told you, if you ever decide to sell this,
I have a Tele
Yeah.
that Guthrie Trapp has said he would buy for me
Exactly.
when I'm ready to sell it.
See?
And I go, how is that possible, Guthrie? Like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
But there are people that would buy my Tele. I could sell it in a second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. So if, because really great Teles are, they don't happen all the time. A lot of Teles are boat anchors, or they just don't have much life to them, or they have really super skinny necks, or there's something that's wrong with them.
Right.
Or they just, everything didn't come into an alignment.
Right.
So, so that's the thing. I had to kind of widen my search and decide that I was going to travel, a couple hundred miles if need be to find, a Tele. And so I already had my sights where it was like, okay, I want a mid-50s V-neck Esquire that's had a body that the body's been refinned.
Yeah.
Especially one where it's had a bad refin where it's going to hurt the value the most.
Yeah. Because you knew that you would basically scrap the finish. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of friends that I can call upon to do the work. So Dan Strain of Danocaster Guitars, he's a good friend, and he was in on this also, even to the point of because I had a couple of Danocasters at that point, and he said, look, if you find the guitar, don't feel bad about selling your Danocasters to help fund this. And I said, are you sure about that? And he said, yes. And he said, I'll make you another one down the road. Dan and I are really good friends.
Yeah.
And we've been good friends for a long time. So it was, I kind of felt funny with him, supporting me but he's like, hey, this is, this is kind of
it's a rite of passage.
Yeah. And it's kind of a lifetime guitar.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I'm not one of those guys. And I love Joe Bonamassa and those other or Brad or these other guys that own like tons of vintage guitars.
Oh my God, Brad's got like a wall of Blackguards.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not that guy. And so this is kind of a lifetime guitar, and Dan understood that. And so he said, okay, we're, because he knew I could flip them really quick and generate some money. So the guitar pops up on Reverb. It's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's been painted rattle can blue. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I mean, it doesn't look good. The original pick guard warped, and they had put some ugly cream single ply on there. The frets were completely worn down. I mean, even from the pictures, I mean, you could tell the frets were pretty worn. Yeah. I mean, it was going to need a refret, and so I asked you asked, how did I work it out with my wife? My wife said, "You're a big boy." She said, "If you can sell the stuff to cover it,
Go ahead.
I don't care. Go ahead, do it."
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife Amy is a wonderful person, and she's always kind of had a very matter of fact attitude. It's like, hey, if you can pay for it, as long as you're not taking food out of the family's
and the kids'
mouth.
college fund.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you can sell stuff to pay for this and she even was kind of like in a reasonable period of time, as long as but so I saw it on Reverb. They were asking a lot of money for it. I talked to them over the phone. This is during the pandemic. I call them on the phone while I'm driving down there. It's Halloween day.
You've sold the guitars already at this point, or not yet?
Not yet.
Yeah.
So, but I had already decided, because it was like late Friday when the listing came up. Saturday morning, like first thing in the morning, I'm leaving because it's a couple hours down to Tuscaloosa. So I want to be there when they open.
Yeah, right.
And while I'm going down there, I'm calling up and asking to talk to the owner and trying to get some price negotiation even before I get down there, because it's like they were asking too much. Especially when I arrive and there's even more undisclosed issues, and that's not to pick on them or anything, but there were just aspects that they weren't aware of. So because it's like, it wasn't a hardcore vintage shop, because that's another thing. That's one of the things you're paying for when you
in Nashville is the authentication of everything. Yeah.
So there's a higher level of authentication that's involved with buying from Carter or Gruen, because they're looking at everything. They're putting everything, everything's going through a fine tooth comb. So there was stuff that they didn't identify. So I show up, they agreed to come down on the price some. The guitar, the frets are completely worn out. I plug it in. The guitar sounds terrible. I mean, it has no low end, and immediately I know that the pickup, the one pickup on the guitar it's pretty much dead. So what happened is that if you looked at it, the pole pieces, the low E pole piece was completely covered in rust, which is a telltale sign of the fact that, and that's why that's why Leo Fender designed the cover.
Right. You did a whole episode.
I did a whole episode
about this. Yeah.
And so like Leo knew this was going to happen, so he put a cover over it. But of course, it made it to where you couldn't palm mute
or pick by the bridge or do a million things.
You can't do a million fun things. So it's just kind of a cost of doing business. If you're going to play a Tele, you're probably going to and if you sweat and play outdoor shows, at some point you're probably going to have your bridge pickup rewound. And it's not a big deal. It's like they you send it in to somebody, Ron Ellis or whoever else, Seymour Duncan, Lindy Fralin, tons of people can do rewinds, and they take the windings off. They look at the pattern, like they kind of unwind it, slowly, so they can see what the winding pattern was. They clean off, all the pull pieces. They dip it in lacquer. They rewind it. They repot it. They put the twine on it. The whole 9 yards. So anyway, the pickup was dead. It sounded terrible, but the neck felt so good. The neck just felt perfect. It was like, this is the best feeling neck I've ever felt in my life. And so they wouldn't go down any more on the price, even though the pickup was dead. And I was just kind of having a hard time. And, and it's during the pandemic, so, you're wearing a mask, and I'm down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's like, what am I doing? And it just seemed like the dumbest thing in the world. And it was so much. I'd never spent that much money on a guitar in my life. And finally, I just felt like, okay, I know all the people I need to know to fix this guitar.
To bring this to life.
I know Ron Ellis. I know he can rewind the pickup. I know that the Nick down at Glazer's shop can refret this thing and do anything to the neck that needs to be done. I know Dan Strain can do, he can do a refin on this thing, and we can put another pick guard or what have you on it. And so I just said, okay, I'll take it. And so it felt so weird, when I handed him my credit card.
Wait, you hadn't sold the Danocasters yet?
No, I hadn't sold them yet.
So this, now the clock's ticking, your wife is
Exactly.
gonna
Yes.
freak out.
No, but she was cool about it because
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
kind of like a reasonable period of time. I buy the guitar and I'm driving home, with the 57 Esquire that's, got a lot of problems and it needs a lot of help. So Sunday morning, I pull it out and start messing with it, and it's just like, again, now I'm playing it through my amp and everything, and it's like, it sounds terrible. It has no low end at all, but the neck feels amazing. So I take it down to Dan's, place, and we disassemble the guitar. We take the pickup out. I take the pickup, we put it in a box. I contact Ron Ellis. He says, he'll rewind it. And we start taking the blue rattle can finish off, and Dan makes me do the sanding on it. And so it was just one of these great moments as you're taking the finish off. Dan says before we even get very far, he says, I bet it's a one-piece body. I bet it's a one-piece body. And the whole guitar is 6.5 pounds.
Right,
That's
yeah.
a golden weight
Yeah.
for Telecasters. So there we are taking the blue, paint off, and yeah, it's a one-piece ash body. And Dan redid the, because I was going to do it black, but when it came out as a one-piece body, and we saw signs of where it had definitely been blonde before, which was the standard finish. It was that kind of white blonde. We, Dan redid it in that. He took the neck, down to Nick Glazer's, and he refretted it. And, Ron Ellis rewound the bridge pickup. I just threw a Ron Ellis neck pickup in there and wired it up, and the thing just sounded so good. It's my favorite Tele of all time. I have yet to play one that's better to me.
Yeah.
So, and that's it's a nice feeling. It's like there's no one's Tele out there that I'm like, oh, I would rather have that one.
Yeah. Right.
So it's and because it was a body refin and all the stuff that was wrong with it. Yeah, it was reasonable. Again, what's reasonable? But I mean, it was under $10,000.
Yeah.
So
you're inspiring me to want to go down this journey.
Yeah.
Now, here are the tips. We're gonna wrap it up. Here are the tips. Go outside in Nashville. You gotta search far and wide.
Yes.
And don't be afraid if this thing looks like a pile of mess. If it's a refin, if the pickguard's not working, don't be afraid. There could be a great guitar underneath there.